Okay, jumping right into this deep dive. You sent over this pretty hefty stack of sources.
Yeah, there was a lot there.
Definitely. And digging into them, a really clear theme started to emerge. It wasn't really about luck or, some kind of innate genius people are born with.
Right. What the material seems to make plain is that success, the kind that really lasts and actually compounds over time, it comes down to a specific set of abilities.
Exactly. Things like learning, adapting, and executing consistently, often like faster than everyone else seems to be doing.
It's about pace and persistence.
Right. So the big question we kind of pulled from these pages, the one hanging over everything, is this. What if the real secret to not just getting ahead, but actually staying ahead, being in that, top tier, lies entirely in specific mindsets and daily habits?
Not magic, but method. A formula, almost.
Precisely. So our mission here is to unpack that formula, the one reviewed in the stack you sent. We're going to try and extract the core strategies, the practical takeaways.
Give you a sort of a direct line to understanding how these high achievers operate.
Yeah, exactly. How they manage to build that unstoppable momentum, even when, let's be honest, it feels like most people get bogged down or just quit.
And the range in these sources is pretty wide, isn't it?
It really is. From those foundational mindset shifts you absolutely need, all the way to the nitty-gritty daily stuff. How to read effectively, how to find focus in this crazy, chaotic world.
The science of discipline, the art of actually doing things, execution, and that non-negotiable power of consistency.
Couldn't have said it better. Let's get into it.
Okay.
So, the material kicks off with something it doesn't shy away from calling the brutal truth.
Which is?
Basically, the second you stop learning, you are actively starting to lose ground. The world's just changing too fast. Static knowledge won't keep you ahead anymore.
That feels true. It makes this observation, doesn't it?
Yes.
Take two people, similar backgrounds, similar starting points.
Yeah, and then a few years down the line, one is just soaring while the other one's kind of stuck. Or maybe even declining.
And the defining difference, these sources argue, isn't necessarily talent or luck or even opportunity, as much as it is that relentless commitment to continuous learning.
And that really resonates, doesn't it? I mean, think about how quickly industries transform.
Oh, totally. Skills that were vital yesterday can be, less relevant tomorrow, if you're not actively updating your own internal software, so to speak.
You are, by definition, falling behind the curve. It's inevitable.
What's fascinating here, though, is how the material frames people's perspective on learning itself.
Right. Most people see education as like a phase with a finish line. You get the diploma, you're done.
But the picture painted of this top 1%, they see it totally differently. It's fundamental. It's a never-ending process woven right into their daily lives.
Which brings us neatly to the first sort of foundational shift the sources emphasize. Adopting a specific kind of mindset. They introduce Carol Dweck's work, Fixed versus Growth Mindset. Absolutely critical here.
It really is.
Yeah.
So a fixed mindset, as explained in the material, is basically the belief that your intelligence, your abilities, your talents, they're just fixed traits. You're born with them. That's your lot.
Okay, so if you struggle with something,
it's seen as proof. Proof you're just not good at it. Full stop.
Yeah.
And that leads to avoiding challenges, being kind of crushed by failure.
Yeah, you don't want to look bad.
Exactly. But in stark contrast, you have the growth mindset. This sees abilities as things you develop through effort, through practice, through persistence. Intelligence isn't fixed, it expands.
So failure isn't an indictment.
No, it's just feedback, it's data and challenges. There are opportunities to get better. This mindset, the sources really stress this, it's non-negotiable if you want continuous improvement.
They even suggest that simple reframe, right? Adding the word yet.
Yeah, that's powerful. I'm not good at this yet. It completely changes the feeling around difficulty.
That tiny linguistic shift, it's amazing how much difference it can make. And speaking of powerful mindsets, the material also highlights curiosity, calls it a kind of superpower.
Oh, I love that point. The argument is that genuinely successful people, they never lose that drive to ask why and what if.
Which contrasts sharply with how many people, maybe as they get older, seem to lose that natural curiosity. They just accept things at face value more.
And curiosity, it fuels exploration, doesn't it? It drives you to look beyond the obvious, to connect seemingly unrelated ideas.
The sources actually directly challenge you, the listener, to consciously start questioning everything around you. Don't just accept the status quo.
But even with a curious mind, a growth-oriented mind, there's still that major hurdle the sources identify, the one that stops most people cold.
Ah, yes. The fear of failure.
This is where so many promising starts just to, they fizzle out.
The sources reframe failure completely, though. It's not the opposite of success.
It's an integral part of the process. The analogy used is really striking. Every expert you admire was once a beginner, often a pretty terrible one, probably.
Right, every master failed countless times.
The difference wasn't avoiding failure. It was seeing it as a necessary step and simply continuing forward, pushing through.
And this persistence despite failure, that's what the material refers to as becoming unstoppable.
Exactly. Overcoming that fear is key.
Okay, so we've got that foundational mindset laid out. Lifelong learning, growth mindset, curiosity, reframing failure. Let's transition now to the daily grind. The actionable habits these sources champion.
Because mindset is crucial, but it needs action.
Right. And there's a powerful claim here. The small, consistent daily habits are actually the ones that make the biggest difference over time, not just the grand, occasional efforts.
Absolutely. They introduce this concept of the power of daily learning, suggesting even just a tiny amount, say 10 minutes a day, can be transformative. Long haul, obviously.
The analogy they use is perfect, isn't it? Learning is like investing.
It's the consistency that allows the compound effect to work its magic.
Ah, yes, the compound effect. The material really drills into this, especially in the context of habits.
Right. The core idea, sometimes called the 1% rule, is pretty mind-blowing when you think about it. Improving by just 1% every single day.
Doesn't sound like much.
No, but it results in a staggering 37 times improvement over a year.
Wow.
That illustrates why those small, consistent actions are exponentially more potent than big, sporadic ones. It's the quiet progress, the hidden stuff that builds empires, not the splashy, inconsistent effort.
And one specific, highly effective tool the sources point to again and again is reading. They label it a secret weapon of high achievers.
The examples are pretty compelling, aren't they? Warren Buffett spending, 80% of his day reading?
Something like that, yeah. Bill Gates reading roughly 50 books a year. Elon Musk apparently learned rocket science from books.
It frames reading as, quoting Buffett from the source, the best investment you can make in yourself.
That really puts things into perspective how you're spending your time. But okay, for the listener thinking, I get why I should read, but what should I read? The sources tackle that too.
Yeah, they advocate for balance. Nonfiction gives you the practical knowledge, the strategies, the how-to blueprints.
Right, the direct application stuff.
But they also highlight the value of fiction for building imagination, empathy, understanding human nature, getting different perspectives.
So a well-rounded reader draws from both wells. Makes sense.
Balance is key. But let's be real, the biggest constraint for most people is time.
Always time. The sources tackle this head-on, though. They discuss techniques for speed reading and, crucially, retention.
Right, because just flying through pages isn't the goal. Speed reading, as they explain it, is about efficiency techniques, like reducing subvocalization, chunking words together.
But the material really emphasizes that reading without retaining the information is, well, it's just moving your eyes across the page. Pointless.
Exactly. So it pairs speed reading with retention strategies. Things like taking notes, highlighting key ideas, and this one's powerful teaching what you learned to someone else.
Ah, the Feynman technique, kind of. Explaining it forces deeper understanding.
Precisely. And to actually make reading happen consistently, day after day, the sources give a pretty clear blueprint for building the habit.
It sounds simple, but the key strategies outlined are start small, maybe just 10-15 minutes.
Make it enjoyable. Read what actually interests you. Don't force yourself through something you hate.
Consistency is the absolute mantra. Simply read every day.
And track your progress. Log the books you read, maybe celebrate hitting milestones. It builds momentum.
The consistent message seems to be that reading isn't just an activity, it's more like a lifestyle choice that opens doors.
Yeah, tapping into this, as the material calls it, the greatest secret weapon. It's about transforming your capacity to learn and grow consistently over time.
Okay, so we've laid the groundwork with mindset. We've talked about the habit of daily learning, particularly through reading. Now let's look at the engine that powers everything else. Consistency, discipline, focus, and execution.
The real doing part.
Exactly. And the sources are pretty direct about a common trap people fall into, the myth of overnight success.
Oh yeah. And the futility of relying solely on motivation.
They're absolutely right, aren't they? Success isn't some sudden event. It's the cumulative result of years, often, of persistence and those seemingly small daily actions.
The real building happens in what the sources call the hidden hours, that focused work done when nobody's watching.
And they have a particularly strong stance on motivation. I think one source even called it a liar. Why so harsh?
Because motivation is fleeting. It's an emotion, right? And like all emotions, it comes and goes. It ebbs and flows.
That's why so many people start strong, maybe after reading something inspiring, but then the motivation just disappears and they stop.
They were waiting for the feeling to come back. but the feeling isn't reliable.
And that's where discipline comes in, isn't it? The sources frame it as the essential counterbalance.
Exactly. Discipline is that invisible force. It's the ability, the skill really, to show up and take action regardless of how you feel in that moment.
Success is about what you do when motivation has completely abandoned you.
That's the argument. They even touch on the science of building this discipline muscle. It's not something you're just born with. It's cultivated.
How? By repeatedly overriding those short-term desires for the long-term gain.
Precisely. You can actually sort of rewire your brain's reward system. The sources mention techniques like deliberately linking immediate pain or negative consequences to procrastination or laziness,
Interesting.
and finding ways to associate pleasure or satisfaction with completing the disciplined action. Even reframing discomfort as a sign of growth helps.
And celebrating the act of being disciplined itself.
Yeah, that reinforces the behavior, builds the muscle over time.
Okay, moving on to another critical element the sources really deep dive into: focus. The modern world, as they point out, seems almost actively designed to just steal our attention.
Constantly. This is where the truth about multitasking comes in, according to the material. It's a total myth of efficiency.
People think they're getting more done, but they're not.
Not really. Multitasking is a productivity killer. They cite figures suggesting it can reduce it by up to 40% and significantly increases stress levels.
Wow, 40%.
Yeah. Your brain doesn't actually do things simultaneously. It just rapidly switches contexts. And the
Okay.
sources mention research showing it can take up to like 23 minutes to fully regain deep focus after being distracted,
23 minutes every time you glance at a notification.
basically. So single tasking is presented as pretty much non-negotiable for high performance.
And the biggest culprit they identify for these distractions are phones, right? Constantly buzzing, pinging.
Checking your phone dozens, maybe even hundreds of times a day is labeled the hidden enemy. The sources offer practical strategies to fight back,
Like what?
proactively creating a distraction-free environment, turning off non-essential notifications, setting specific scheduled times for checking email or messages, not just reacting constantly.
Working in focus blocks too, right? They mentioned the Pomodoro technique.
It's all about deliberately taking back control of your attention from your devices and your environment.
Which ties directly into the concept of deep work. That ability to focus intensely without distraction for extended periods.
Yeah, that's where the really valuable, complex work happens. The material gives a kind of blueprint for entering this state.
Okay, what does that involve?
Eliminating all possible distractions is step one. Creating a simple ritual to signal to your brain, okay, it's focus time now. Setting a very clear intention for what you need to accomplish in that block.
And scheduling it, like an appointment.
Exactly. Using time blocking. Treat it like an important meeting you cannot miss.
Protecting that focused time, though, often requires another powerful skill they mention: the power of saying no.
Oh, definitely. The sources put it starkly. The top 1% guard their focus like billionaires guard their wealth.
Saying no isn't avoidance, then, it's preservation.
Crucial preservation. It protects your most valuable, non-renewable resources, your time and your focus. The material suggests saying no to unnecessary meetings, frivolous digital interactions, even people who consistently drain your energy and attention.
That takes courage sometimes.
It does, but it's necessary. Bringing all these pieces together, the discipline, the focus, the ability to say no, leads to what the sources call relentless execution.
Because knowing what to do is one thing.
But actually doing it consistently, day after day, that's the game changer. That's where most people fall short.
They identify some major traps that keep people from executing, right?
Yeah, 3 deadly ones. The learning loop, just getting stuck, consuming endless information without ever applying it.
Guilty as charged sometimes.
We all are. Then there's the perfectionist delay, waiting for the perfect moment, the perfect plan, which, of course, never arrives. Perfect is the enemy of done, as they say.
And the third.
The distraction addiction we just talked about, constantly letting focus get shattered.
So how do you escape those traps? They outline a system, don't they, for relentless execution?
Yes, it's a really powerful framework. Starts with ruthless prioritization using the 80-20 principle. Focus intensely on the 20% of tasks that yield 80% of the results.
Cut out the fluff.
Exactly. Then, the no 0 days rule. Commit to never miss a single day working towards your key goal, even if it's just for 10 minutes. It keeps the momentum alive.
I like that. Prevents those long gaps. What else?
The time-blocking domination method. Don't just list tasks. Schedule when you will execute them. Make it a non-negotiable appointment in your calendar.
Makes it real.
The 2-minute rule. A simple trick to beat procrastination. If a task takes less than 2 minutes, do it immediately. Or just commit to starting a bigger task for only 2 minutes. Often, that's enough to get you going.
Gets you over the initial hurdle.
Yep. And finally, the idea of winning the morning, using that first hour or so productively before the world's distractions inevitably creep in.
That all sounds incredibly effective, but also challenging, especially on days when you just feel completely drained or overwhelmed.
Oh, the sources don't pretend it's easy. They absolutely acknowledge that. They reinforce that discipline is like a muscle. It gets stronger precisely by pushing through that resistance.
So on those tough days,
The advice is concrete. Lean on your system. Don't negotiate with your tired or unmotivated self. Stick to the plan. And crucially, reconnect back to your fundamental why, the deeper reason you started this whole thing in the first place. That can pull you through.
Okay, let's shift focus slightly now. Let's look at the distinctive way the sources portray the top 1% thinking and acting. It's presented as fundamentally different from the average approach, not just smarter or better connected.
Yeah, they draw some really clear contrasts. For instance, the average person often thinks in terms of linear effort, right? Trading hours directly for dollars or just trying to work harder.
Whereas the 1%,
They think in terms of leverage. How can they use systems, tools, other people's time or money, assets, or specific high-leverage skills to multiply their output, to achieve more with less personal time and effort involved?
doing more with less. Smart.
Another crucial difference highlighted is in decision-making. Average people often let fear or excitement or just immediate feelings drive their choices, which can lead to hesitation or reacting poorly.
Emotional decisions.
The 1%, according to this material, prioritize logic over emotion in their critical decisions. They train themselves to step back and ask, okay, feelings aside, what is the smartest, most strategic move right now?
That allows them to invest rationally, take calculated risks.
Cut distractions logically based on effectiveness, not just comfort or habit. And while most people seem wired for instant gratification, looking for those quick wins,
The 1% are playing a long game.
exactly. They deeply understand delayed gratification. They're willing to put in the work for years sometimes towards a big goal without needing that immediate payoff, because they trust in the power of compound growth over time.
Patience and perspective. The sources also dedicate significant attention to unshakable confidence, making it clear this isn't about ego or arrogance.
No, it's a deep-seated belief built on actual competence and self-trust.
And how do they say that's built? It's not just inherent.
Not at all. They outline the pillars. Achieving genuine mastery in a chosen area is one. Intentionally exposing yourself to situations that trigger fear to build resilience is another.
Facing the fear.
Yep, consciously controlling your physiology, your posture, your breathing, cultivating a positive, constructive internal dialogue, and maybe most importantly, consistently keeping the promises you make to yourself. That builds internal trust.
Because the material is pretty blunt, isn't it?
Yeah.
Something like, the world does not reward insecurity.
Exactly. Confidence is presented as a form of power, and intimately connected to that is mental toughness.
Ah, yes. The sources suggest this is a primary reason most people ultimately fail. They are, in the words used, mentally weak. They just crumble when things get genuinely difficult.
And again, mental toughness isn't portrayed as innate, it's built. The blueprint involves embracing hardship, not shying away from it, acting despite feeling uncomfortable or scared, taking full ownership, especially under pressure.
So how do you build it? What are the strategies?
Handling pain or difficulty without complaining is one. Ruthlessly controlling your internal thoughts, not letting negativity spiral. Deliberately seeking out challenging situations to test yourself. And forging a self-identity as someone who simply never quits.
You build that inner strength by showing up repeatedly, even when everything inside you is screaming to stop.
Understanding that pain and struggle are part of the process, not a sign to give up.
All of these elements, the leverage, the logic, the long game, confidence, toughness, they seem to culminate in what the sources call the relentless pursuit of mastery.
Yeah, they argue that the average person stays average because they just dabble.
Yeah.
Try a bit of this, a bit of that.
Well, the top performers.
They dominate their field because they obsess. They go incredibly deep.
And mastery is described as
Well,
not glamorous.
not at all. It's the willingness to do the painful, boring, repetitive work that most people just aren't willing to undertake day after day.
Yes.
It's earned through that relentless execution we talked about.
Is there a framework for achieving it?
Yes. Pick one core obsession and go all in. Drill intensely into the absolute fundamentals until they're second nature. Create a rigorous, almost insane training routine, deliberate practice, high repetition, seeking out brutal, honest feedback.
Ouch. Brutal feedback.
Necessary for growth. All fueled by relentless discipline and a commitment to being a lifelong student, never assuming you've arrived.
Which brings us perfectly to the final crucial point in these sources. The ultimate competitive edge isn't just getting ahead, it's staying ahead.
Exactly. Getting to the top is one challenge, but maintaining that position year after year, that's where the real difference lies, and where most eventually fail.
And the number one enemy of staying ahead, according to this material.
Complacency. Simple as that.
Yeah.
It's shifting from that essential growth mindset back into just maintaining the status quo, feeling like you've made it.
Well, the 1%.
They're constantly reinventing themselves. They treat every single day as if they are still climbing, still hungry, still needing to prove themselves.
How do they sustain that? It requires what the sources call the forever student mindset, right?
Precisely. Never stop learning, never stop evolving, always challenging your own assumptions and methods.
Stay intensely curious. Surround yourself with people who push you, who challenge your thinking.
Never rely solely on past successes. Intentionally embrace discomfort as a sign that you're still pushing boundaries, still growing.
And this relentless mindset, it needs to be combined with the discipline of high performers.
That ruthless consistency we keep coming back to, applied not just for a few weeks or months, but as a fundamental way of life, powered by strong systems and that deep well of mental toughness. That's how the 1% apparently stay ahead year after year after year.
So looking back over this entire deep dive, covering everything in the sources you shared, wow, we've covered a tremendous amount of ground.
We really have.
We started with those foundational mindset shifts, embracing lifelong learning, cultivating that growth mindset and curiosity, and really fundamentally changing how we view failure, not as an end, but as data.
Essential building blocks.
Then we dug into the power of consistent daily habits, highlighting reading as a key tool, but also outlining practical ways to build and maintain any crucial habit through consistent action, not just relying on willpower.
The power of small daily steps compounding over time.
And we explored the absolute non-negotiable requirements of discipline and focus, especially in this world that's desperate to steal your attention. We detailed how to build that internal strength and implement systems for relentless execution.
Moving from knowing to doing.
Exactly. And finally, we pulled out those distinct mental models of the top performers. Their use of leverage, their reliance on logic over emotion, their unwavering commitment to the long game.
Their cultivated confidence, that hard-won mental toughness, and the relentless pursuit of mastery is the ultimate differentiator.
This deep dive into your stack of material, it really lays bare a powerful, actionable blueprint for building and maintaining that kind of unstoppable momentum.
It makes a strong case, doesn't it? That it's not about some mythical innate ability or just getting lucky.
Not at all. It's built on conscious choices, consistent practice, and deliberately cultivating a specific way of thinking and acting.
And the sources, they kind of leave you with a profoundly simple yet really challenging question, don't they?
Which is?
Who are you becoming? They emphasize that success isn't some destination you just arrive at. It's a process. It's a lifestyle built day by day. It's all about the continuous journey of growing, learning, and improving yourself.
The knowledge is here now, isn't it? Extracted from these sources you provided. The blueprint is laid out pretty clearly.
The path is there.
So here is the final thought to leave you with, pulled straight from the pages we explored today. Will you go back to the old habits? The ones that, let's face it, keep the vast majority stuck right where they are.
Or will you take this blueprint, maybe starting small, starting today, and actually use it to build that unstoppable momentum, to prove to yourself that you are one of the rare few who will actually take what they've learned and relentlessly apply it?
Your future, according to these sources, really hinges entirely on that answer. Something to think about.